vaccin COVID-19 là approuvé pour ti moun 5 ans ou soit plus grand.
C'est plusieurs milliers de timoun qui ont participé dans le test qui prouvait vaccin sain et sauf et puis efficace.
L'année qui s'est passée là, c'était difficile pour nous toutes, et spécialement pour timoun nou yo.
Vaccin a permis toute activité recommencer. En même temps, la mette timoun yo et nous-mêmes tout en sécurité.
Li normal pour nous gagner question sous petit nous avec vaccin.
Parler avec Petito, les fini, prend conseil dans mes docteurs.
Mes amis, fais la science confiance. Prends vaccin.
As always, I'll welcome you with open arms, with a great smile, and certainly that should cherish your heart, without no doubt. You are on the bridge, and my name is Jean-Claude Senon, your host. But I have a surprise for you in the house today. But let me see if I can be as brief as possible. On the bridge, the purpose is to inform, to educate, and to entertain. This is where we bring you the politicians, the activists, the leaders in our community, and those who are certainly affecting our lives one way or another. And today we're going to have one that I haven't seen for over 2 years almost. I'll tell you, this COVID is really killing us, but what can we do? We're just going to have to learn to live with it. On the bridge today, things will be changing. We'll have a co-host. Normally it's Kevin Peterson that is here with us very often. But at times you will have people like Mr. Sharp who will be here with us some of the days. But today I have a surprise for you in the house. His name is well known because he has attempted to run for public office twice. This is a gentleman that I have met over at Suffolk University where we were taking the class of becoming the next politicians in the city of Boston. And David was just, a very talented young man, a prominent politician. David Albert will be in the house with us. Our guest, pretty well known too, because when you are leading the NAACP, it can be a joke. And that's a big responsibility on her shoulder. And she's about to take more than just that. She's also an attorney, and as well as a member of Ward 18 that I'm a vice chair of. We put on the fight together already, and we broke the chain of 40-some years of really having the real diversity into Ward 18. Without no further ado, let me welcome my co-host for today, David Albert. And I'm going to say it in French, man, so don't bother, all right? Don't be upset because I didn't say it the English way, okay? Bonjour, mon ami, comment ça va?
Bonjour, comment ça va?
Very good. David, introduce yourself to everybody since this is your first one, and I think there'll be so many more coming.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and it's wonderful to be here on the bridge with you and with your wonderful, wonderful guest, who's also a dear friend, and of course, with your audience. Once again, my name is David Halbert. I'm a proud Dorchester resident, father of 2 beautiful little girls, a husband, and as Jean-Claude mentioned, a former candidate for Boston City Council at large. I currently serve as a member of the Massachusetts Democratic State Committee and have been involved in a number of civic organizations all across the city and in other parts of the state as well. Originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, which is why I don't have much of an accent, but I'm very, very excited about the Super Bowl this weekend. But in all seriousness, I'm just really excited to be here to engage in these important conversations about the future of our community and those people who want to lead as part of that future. And I couldn't be more thrilled to have this first conversation with a dynamic candidate in Miss Tanisha Sullivan.
It is not an easy decision. It's a very tough decision. And I have said earlier, I respected anyone who puts their name out there to run for public office. Not too many of us will ever do it in our lifetime. So therefore, we need to stand by them, work with them, and make sure that their pathway is very successful. Without no further ado, I'm going to roll the red carpet for the lady in the house, Tanisha Sullivan. A pleasure to have you.
It is so good to be here with you, Jean-Claude. And you're right, we were talking about the fact that we haven't seen each other since probably a week before the COVID-19 shutdown. And it really is good to be in the space, to share space with you. And also my very good friend, David Halbert. You are absolutely right. David is a rock star. He is deeply committed to community, and I can't wait to see what's next for him.
That makes two of us, plus my wife.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, that's the purpose of the bridge, is to bring you guys together and to really establishing the relationship with the African diaspora. Very important indeed, because I think a lack of communications causes us not to progress, not to really achieve a lot of things. Because if we don't come together, who else is going to do it for us?
That's right.
Besides ourselves, because we can see what's going on all throughout the country in terms of the need for us to come together. And speaking of needs for us to come together, our black women are rocking just about all over and everywhere. So it seems like we're about to have another one. Tanisha Sullivan, take the chance of this audience to tell them a little bit about you. I know there's a lot, but you know, you know how to shrink it, how to summarize it.
I appreciate the opportunity. Again, it's really good to be here. I grew up in Brockton, the city of champions, home of marvelous Marvin Hagler and Rocky Marciano. I say that because I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter for justice. I'm a fighter for equality. I'm a fighter for our freedom. And as a civil rights leader here in the greater Boston area, we've taken on some really tough fights in the interest of advancing racial, economic, and social justice. We have advanced education equity here in Boston, and also worked tirelessly to ensure at the state level that there is funding for our public schools, specifically funding for our low-income students, our English learners, our students with disabilities. We've also taken on the tough fight and the tough work of police reform. And I want to say that in Boston, we were able to work with law enforcement across the ideological spectrum to bring about meaningful policing reform in Boston, work that I'm very proud of, work that I believe will help to increase public safety and public confidence. There too, at the state level, we work to advance police reform, and at the beginning of this year, the governor signed into law historic police reform legislation. But over the last now year and a half, a lot of our fight has been relative to public health and economic justice. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has hit our communities of color, particularly hard. And so during this pandemic, we've been focusing on ensuring that folks who didn't have the ability to work from home, folks who had to be in our hospitals, driving the buses, folks packing groceries and on the cash register in the grocery store, those of us who really kept our community running through the pandemic, working to make sure that there were supports in place, access to testing, access to vaccines, and of course, I'm very pleased, that there were opportunities for additional financial resources. So there's been a lot that we've taken on, and as I look to this race for Secretary of State, which is statewide, I'm looking forward to continuing that work, to bringing a civil rights lens to that office, to ensure that the office serves as a bridge between we the people and our government.
That is so nice. However, before David jumps in, I need you to roll back the clock for me on your services as an attorney, and also the elections of Ward 18, which I think everybody needs to be briefed on, and a little bit about the NAACP, your accomplishment also with them.
Yes, so I am an attorney. I graduated from Boston College 20 years ago with my law degree and my MBA. And so I've been practicing for 20 years. I have had the opportunity to work with both very small businesses as well as big businesses, really working to help ensure that that our communities, particularly on the pro bono side, that our communities have the supports they need to have thriving companies. One note on that, my commitment and my interest in small businesses comes from my mom. Because when I was growing up in Brockton, my mother started 3 home-based businesses. My mother is a small business owner. She started, her first business was an in-home daycare. And after a few years of doing that work, she realized that there were other people in the community, primarily women, who wanted to do the same. And so she started a home daycare system where she was able to support other, again, primarily women, start their home-based daycare and get the resources they needed to be successful. She then went on to co-found and publish the Black Pages of New England.
I remember that one.
Yes. And so my mom, for about 20 years, provided a vital resource to the Black community here in Massachusetts and across New England, but also to the community at large, helping to ensure that Black businesses were seen and that our services and our products were used. And so in my work as a lawyer, I've always sought to find ways to support small businesses like my mom's. And it's also why, as Secretary of State, I want to ensure that that office is doing all it can to support small businesses too. Ward 18. Wow. We did that.
We did it.
Together.
We did, yes.
Together. And that's what it takes to make change. Working together. And as our cities, as our Commonwealth continues to grow, as we become increasingly more diverse, racially, ethnically, linguistically diverse, it's important that we are working together. Ward 18 is one of the most diverse wards in Massachusetts. We are one of the strongest, I'd like to say.
Yes. And the biggest.
wards in Massachusetts. And what we sought out to do was to ensure that the ward is the most inclusive. There's power in local organizing. There's power in local sharing of information. And so what we were able to do together to help really modernize Ward 18, open it up, make it more inclusive, I hope serves as a model for the direction we're headed across Massachusetts, so that we can have a stronger, more vibrant, and expansive democracy that's working for all of us.
David, you can take it from there, man.
Well, couldn't say it any better myself. Tanisha, quick question for you, for those who may not be aware. Can you just go a little bit into what it is the Secretary of State's office actually does? I know for many folks, they might see the current incumbent every now and then on a poster or a commercial, but they may not really be aware of the full breadth and scope of this office.
Yes, great question, David. The office is quite expansive. I'm going to start with voting, because as a civil rights leader, I know how important our right to vote is, and how important, particularly now, it is for us to protect it. The office has primary responsibility for election administration. So ensuring that those of us who have the right to vote are able to vote. I believe that the office should be doing more. I believe the office should not only be responsible for the administration of elections, but the office should be a champion for the advancement of voting rights. That's the civil rights fight we're in today, the advancement of voting rights. The office is also responsible for information. It's called the Chief Information Officer. And there, Jean-Claude and David, is where we've got the bridge. Right now, the office is primarily administrative there too. But I believe the vibrancy of our democracy requires that that office be a gateway, be a bridge between us, the people, and our government. And what I mean by that is a democracy, a society that is inclusive and that is vibrant is one where we are part of the decision making. We are part of the policy making. We have the power to make the change that is going to improve our own lives. And in order to do that, we not only need access to information, we need supports to know how to use that information. And so I'll work very closely with our schools, primarily our public schools, to help create a culture of civic participation, ensuring that our young people have access to civics education, and also ensuring that we all know our right to information, and again, know how to use that information so that we can truly be a part of our government. The office also has oversight responsibility for our corporations. If you want to do business in Massachusetts, right now you have to register with the Secretary of State's office, you've got to file annual reports, and you have to pay fees. So register, file, pay your money. I believe there's more opportunity there. Like I said, my mom is a small business owner. And so particularly in this moment, where so many of our small businesses in community are struggling, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, yes, but even before.
Right.
That office should be, and it could absolutely be, yet another bridge between our small businesses the heartbeats of our communities and the vital resources that government has to offer and that the nonprofit communities have to offer to help ensure that those businesses can thrive. My point here is that the office is responsible for a lot, but we need a fresh perspective, a perspective that has in mind a goal of opportunity, so that the office isn't just about administration or transaction, but that it really is about creating more vibrancy, creating more opportunity, and ensuring that we all are not just feeling like we're part of this democracy, but that we are part of this democracy.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, Tanisha, thank you so much. It's wonderful to hear your thoughts on that. One area that I'm very curious about that I think a lot of people may not know is that the Secretary's office also oversees lobbyist registration and much lobbyist activity. Obviously, with so much going on at the State House, as you mentioned, the work that the NAACP Boston branch has been involved in pushing things like police reform legislation. We know how vital it is, understanding what that relationship is between our elected officials who are making decisions and those individuals who are trying to influence those decisions. Once again, bringing transparency and sunlight to the process of policymaking. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on what is currently happening at the Secretary's office and ways in which you might want to change that to bring additional transparency to, once again, an area and a corner that can sometimes be a little bit in the dark for the population.
You're absolutely right, David. And the data supports what you've said. Massachusetts ranks 47th in the nation when it comes to government transparency. We are at the bottom, and we didn't get there overnight. And so what so many of us are feeling, like government is just coming down on us, that government isn't listening to us or working for us, that's real. And so as Secretary of State, I will work tirelessly to ensure that we are leading in the nation when it comes to transparency. There is nothing good that can happen for communities that are vulnerable when business is happening in the dark. Okay?
Well, this is I think this is nicely answered. There's no doubt about it. We got to remove the shadows where they're at and really bring the lights. I want to tag on into a couple things. One of them, when you were talking about the responsibility of the Secretary of State, and I appreciate the fact that there's a lack of civic educations with our schooling, which is causing the next generations to come up. They're not interested that much in terms of participation. That's a good one. They are also in charge of all the other elections department out of every part of this, of the state. So therefore, an oversight of them, how important it is, because there are certain areas, it's like they feel like I have control of this. It's not the Secretary of State. So how do you overcome this so that you can really do an oversight and making sure that these different elections department out of the state is really running well?
Yeah.
And lastly, the man has been in there forever. Okay? And I know it's hard when you're taking on incumbents. But what message you really have for the people in terms of leaving folks in office forever and they become, not interested anymore with the position so much. They don't do as much as they're supposed to do. Isn't it time for the people of Massachusetts to really wake up and stop this nonsense? Because if we are 47% in terms of transparencies, we are at the bottom. The only way of uplifting it is by removing some of the old players and bringing in some new players. So what do you think of that?
I agree with you, and that's why I'm running. And that's why I'm running now, because it is time for a fresh perspective. It is time for a new lens in that office. And the reality is that we can't wait, because every year that passes by, that's more people who are not a part of our democracy. That's more businesses that aren't getting the supports they need. That's more young people who are not learning about this beautiful thing called democracy, and therefore not part of the culture of civic participation. That's why I'm running now, because it has been too long. And the way that things have been done, business as usual, it's not working. Well, it's not working for all of us. When it comes to the local elections officials, you're right there too. Local election officials are the ones who are responsible for election administration. And they need support. There can be autonomy, but there can also be support. And so I want to make sure that our elections officials in our municipalities have the support they need by way of resources, by way of best practices and training, and really anything else that they need to support the work, so that there is more consistency across the Commonwealth and people do feel supported in what is a critical part of our democracy. We've got to have safe and secure elections in order for the results to be trusted. But that means that we have to support those who are on the ground doing that work.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Tanisha, so I know that you've gone on record in support of same-day voter registration, because we know what a tremendous impact that can have, and once again, expanding the franchise, expanding access to the opportunity to participate in democracy. I'm wondering, where do you see the Secretary's office, if you see the Secretary's office, taking that step beyond just getting people registered and really motivating and giving people a reason and a way to get out and actually participating at the polls?
Absolutely, I do support same-day voter registration, and that's not a new idea for me. A key distinction that I believe my record reflects is that I roll up my sleeves. I'm in community. I am not someone who's going to be an armchair leader. I want to be in community to help ensure that whatever reforms we may pass, I want to make sure that they actually have impact and that they're not just words on a piece of paper. And that's going to require us to restore confidence in our democracy. It's going to require that we do more education in our community. And it's going to require that people who are in our neighborhoods actually know what we have the right to do. Same-day voter registration has been demonstrated to increase the participation of voters in vulnerable communities, in BIPOC communities, and in other communities that oftentimes have lower voter participation. Same-day voter registration is also a reform that will help increase access for workers who may decide at any given moment that they want to exercise their right to vote. I believe that if we've got the right to vote, then we should be able to, at any given moment, up to the day of an election, be able to exercise that right. And same-day voter registration will allow for that to happen.
We have a time constraint, David. We're going to do some very short Q&A as fast as we can. When is the election?
So the primary election date has not been solidified, but it will likely be on September 6th. The reason that's important is because we need people to vote on September 6th. So September is when we're voting. That will be the opportunity to cast your ballot for Tanisha Sullivan. September. And so that's the date that we're working toward.
David, let's see if we can move it faster.
Absolutely. So, Tanisha, obviously the elephant in the room, no pun intended, is the legislature. You have to run things through. You have to run everything from the laws that get passed to the budget for your office. How are you going to interact with those members, particularly those you haven't had experience with because they're outside of the Boston and greater Boston area?
I have a track record of working across the ideological spectrum, meaning with Democrats, Republicans, and those who are unenrolled to get things done. I'm collaborative, I have a track record of that, and we've been able to deliver. I will continue to work in that way and look forward to working in partnership with the legislature as well as the executive branch.
If people are interested in helping you out, which is one of the most important elements, especially fundraising, because when you're talking about Secretary of State, you're looking at the whole entire state. Raising that kind of money against an incumbent who's been raising tons and tons of money, how is that going to be? How can people really work with Tanisha Sullivan?
It is true. The incumbent's been there for 27 years, almost 3 decades, and so he's been raising money, so we've got to raise too. My website is TanishaSullivan.com. But in addition to financially contributing to our campaign, I want to invite everyone today to join our campaign as a volunteer, because we're building a movement, and a movement needs the people. And so if you're interested in joining us, wherever you are, the campaign will welcome you. TanishaSullivan.com. You can go there, learn more about me, but also learn how to volunteer on our campaign and to make financial contributions. Any amount can and will make a difference.
I know you want to do a final dent, David, so this is your last opportunity. Let's do it before I wrap it up.
All right, the most important question for any statewide candidate. Tanisha, there are 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth. You're going to be traveling and touching all of them. I know you've been out about all since you've announced, and I'm wondering, what's the best thing you've eaten while you've been out there?
Oh my goodness. So here's the problem. I didn't realize, as a statewide candidate, eating is like on the bottom of the list. So I definitely have to work on that. But I'm a seafood lover. And so I love being, certainly on the South Shore where we can get some really good seafood.
You stay connected and be sure that you continue with your hard work. There are mainstream media that you're going to have to consult with, but there will also be ethnic media that you need to consult with, because I think they'll be the backbone of your success in the future. As I have told Michelle, I'm going to tell every candidate the same thing, because when they neglect us, you neglect a big chunk of this population. We want to wish you the best of luck week coming up soon, and can't wait to celebrate with you when the time comes as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jean-Claude. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
First, David, really you had your baptême de feu. So in other words, officially, David will certainly be with us as often as possible because he's a father, he's got kids, he's got school, he's got work. So you're going to be seeing him off and on. This is what we call building up the bridge. Bring everybody together and making sure that we are helping, developing our community to grow and become much better. My name is Jean-Claude Sanon, the host of Radio Concorde, Forum Communautaire, MCTV, Info80.net, and Camera Mosaic. We all combine our efforts together to really share with you the best. May you have a nice one. Thank you.
Vaccin COVID-19 sa yo, c'est une solution importante pour protéger tête et puis pour mettre fin à la pandémie ça.
Mais, ou capable de question sur sécurité vaccin.
Se même mesure sécurité yo te utilisé pour tout l'autre vaccin yo. Se yo tout yo te suivre pour vaccin COVID-19 yo.
Il y a des dizaines de milliers de monde qui ont participé dans l'essai vaccin COVID-19 sa yo et le résultat a prouvé que yo sain et sauf.
Depuis les sato, il y a plusieurs millions de monde, différentes races et ethnicités qui prennent vaccin. Et puis c'est un petit malaise tout petit yo te gagné.
Moi te prends vaccin pour me protéger tête moi, famille et patient yo.
Les tout pour l'arrivée, pas hésiter. Fais la médecine confiance. Prends vaccin.